This is part 2 where we're going to discuss, or I will be discussing, handwriting. And again, I'm wondering what is remembered in your background from learning to write or having handwriting lessons. Many people ask whether it's even worth doing anymore or where has it gone. In fact, in some literature, recent literature, we'll see it called the forgotten skill, a forgotten language skill, and even the Cinderella of the language skill, meaning that it's kind of forgotten and pushed to the side. But the truth is that handwriting shouldn't be forgotten and that it still is a recognised and required part of the curriculum for us to teach. But I wonder if you know why that might be. To stop and reflect at this point so that you can answer that question, why don't you think about how you learned handwriting at school, or whether you did. Did you have a notion of how to write before you went to school? Do you remember having formal handwriting lessons and when they stopped in school? And why do you think they might, handwriting lessons or handwriting as a part of the curriculum might have been seen to fall from attention, even though technically it hasn't? What do you think? You might want to pause here and come back when you're ready to think about the connection between your background knowledge and what's about to come. So in the Australian curriculum English, students are taught handwriting, to do it fluently and legibly, to use the correct letter formation at each year from kindergarten to year 6. There's no specified recommended style of handwriting, and so it becomes the state or territory's decision as to what style of handwriting is to be taught. And in Queensland we use the Queensland Beginners Alphabet and the Queensland Modern Cursive. And in tutorials this week you'll spend a section of the time practicing your handwriting skills. Not just so you learn the correct formation, but also so that your tutors can talk to you about your posture, about your pencil grip, and how you are writing as a model for the students that you're going to be having in your classrooms. Producing legibly it feels like an automatic process for us. In fact, if you picked up a pencil and had to write, you probably don't have to think about the letter formation that you're writing. But for young children, this is a really complex task. And the fact is, it's coordinating several kinds of processes or skills at the same time. It's cognitive, so they're having to think about the spelling of the word, as well as the what the letters look like. Motoric, in meaning there's a neuromuscular, and the actual holding of the pencil process in this, as well as the memory of those writing processes. You know how we get kids to copy words down, not copy them down, we get them to write the word over and over again if we're really horrible teachers. Partly that's to do with this muscle memory that's supposed to be part of the process as well, meaning that if you've written the word, that you might remember writing the word. So it's to do with a physical aspect as well as a cognitive, and that makes it a very complex task when you're learning. It's not as easy as it might seem for us as adults. Research shows that we have to continue with handwriting, and that is because we are starting to see some links between handwriting and composition. So interestingly, if you have automaticity with your handwriting, that means you can do it without too much thinking, then you can focus your attention on composition. So we see children with less well-formed handwriting and more difficulty with handwriting, having difficulty in their composition. And so there's an element here of us recognizing where there might be difficulties in the composition, but there might be difficulties in composition that are caused by handwriting difficulties. So it is a necessary part. It does matter. It also matters because we can find some research that says handwriting is linked to overall academic achievement. That's because more legible texts are scored more highly by teachers, and that handwriting difficulties can overtax the cognitive resources so that the child is not able to show their knowledge and their ability to compose, as we said in the last slide, because it's they're having to concentrate on the handwriting. And there are negative experiences with handwriting that can have a great impact on motivation. I once watched a documentary of adults who had dyslexia or dysgraphia or dysorthography, which I've talked about in the spelling section, which is often identified by extremely untidy handwriting, and it is not a child writing untidily. It is their inability to produce neat handwriting that is one of the observations that you can make about a child having difficulty there. And in this video, the girl talked about how she was the only child in the class who didn't get a pen license, and yet she was unable to produce the handwriting that was required for the handwriting license. I'm not a believer in having pen licenses in classrooms, and not having them given to students who have disabilities, I think, is one of the most inequitable things that you can do to children. Something to think about there. Again, I would prompt you to do some reading around dysorthography if it's something that piques your interests there. Handwriting can be associated with academic achievement. One of these is that is the thought that it lifts the cognitive load during academic tasks. So you don't have to think about the letter formations. You can concentrate on what the academic task is. And there's research being done there around whether that's the same for mathematical symbols. So knowing what the mathematical symbols are might help to increase the attention towards the actual academic task rather than breaking the code. There may be associations with other cognitive factors. Copying letters may require some flexibility in taking attention, impulse control and working memory, and it's thought that there may be some association between that and self-regulation. And an example that is looked at there is that many students who are been found to have ADHD can have dysfunctions in their ability to handwrite, and so there are some thoughts there about an association between handwriting and some other cognitive factors such as attention and impulse control and working memory. I wonder if you'd thought about that. Handwriting seems like such a simple thing, but of course it's not. It's a highly complex skill. There's handwriting interventions that have been shown to work. One example here is from an 8-week program where the researchers took 114 Year 2 students, and they were taught with some integration, some orthographic motor integration. Think about the knowledge that you have around what that means: ortho, graphic, and motor. And as you can see, here's a quote from the researchers: the ability to call to mind and write letter shapes, groups of letters and words efficiently and effectively without allocation of cognitive attention, mentally coding and rehearsing visual representations of these patterns and integrating them with motor patterns. So what they found when they were prompting the students to have these visualizations and the rehearsals of the patterns, that there was significant handwriting improvement in composition as well. More than half of the variance in scores or written expression was accounted for by the the intervention of the program. So they believed it had a strong impact on the students. So it is possible to intervene with students having difficulty. Of course, more more time and intensity of assistance would be needed for students who have a disability, like those with dysorthography. The evidence is limited that we have the correct kinds of teaching or pedagogy required, but we do know some things. We do know that the different types of scripts that schools or states choose have been simplified, which does enable more handwriting or more success with handwriting, and that early effects of joining letters together has been argued about whether there's some kind of link in the joining that helps the visual kinesthetic link of spelling. Some people believe that the copying of or the practicing of spelling with joins helps students to remember the spelling. So they think of that as a visual kinesthetic link, almost like that muscle memory that I was talking about before. So we don't know a whole lot, but what we do know is that there's strong evidence that it does improve the composition of students who have poor automaticity. So by bringing our students to the level that they're automatic with it, we know that we're freeing up their attention to other writing processes. So whether we have one particular type of strategy to do it or multiple, we know that it is worthwhile doing, and that is why handwriting shouldn't be the Cinderella of the curriculum. Here's a little bit more information about dysgraphia or dysorthographia, as you'll sometimes see it called. If you're seeing children on practicum that look like they just have the most horrendous looking handwriting you've ever seen, one of the things that can be happening is that there's actually a disability here, and it's not about their just messy handwriting. So you might see things like unfinished or omitted words from the writing, inconsistencies in the way that the letters are written. They might sit with a strange positioning of their body or their wrists or their paper. It looks like a slow and really laborious kind of skill. And what most importantly is that you'll notice that when you talk to these children about the stories that they want to write, there'll be a big discrepancy between their understanding and what they want to write and then what they're able to write. And that's one of the big ways of looking and finding dysgraphia or dysorthographia. All right, next is punctuation.